For our next session, we have 3 presenters who will each talk about some key best practices related to first source reduction, donation, and composting. And we're going to hold questions to the end and then do it as a scrum for all 3. So to start off, I'd like to introduce Janine Oberstadt, the Director of Corporate Sustainability for Creative Dining Services.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm going to talk to you. JD kind of set me up really well. He's like, is there anybody in the audience that deals with food service? So here I am, and I know that there's others of you out there too. I am entering my 40th year in the hospitality industry. And boy, do my feet feel it. But I've worked in just about every type of food service out there. My parents were restaurateurs. I grew up in the back of a kitchen. And you know, I've made my way through hotels, banquet catering, restaurants, bars, you name it, including a large institutional feeding, which is what we do at Creative Dining Services. And what I know for sure, in my experience, is that historically, there's so many great things about working in our industry, but the bad news about our industry is that we have environments of intense energy use, intense water usage, and we create a lot of waste, unfortunately, in both packaging and, yes, food waste. This past year at Creative Dining, we decided specifically to really hone in on food waste, and we created a proprietary program called Trashed, which got our manager's attention right away. Trashed is 10 best practices in source reduction of food waste that I'm going to share with you this afternoon. So out of all the different types of things that we could have really honed in sustainability-wise, we have a pretty robust sustainability program at Creative Dining. Why did specifically we choose food waste this past year? Well, one of the reasons is that the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, has been making a lot of noise about this, and our industry has picked up on that and has started to advocate on behalf of food waste reduction, specifically source reduction. And in 2016, the EPA, for the first time, set a national goal around food waste reduction, which was 50% by 2030. That's no small goal. Currently, the food waste that's going to landfill contributes to approximately 18% of the total US methane emissions. Methane is a very, very powerful greenhouse gas, 21 times more potent than carbon. So it's understandable why the EPA, in its fight to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to mitigate climate change, they're definitely looking at this and advocating for it. There's also the very noble and responsible byproduct of this, which is trying to repurpose some of this waste, keep it happening from the first place, because we have millions of hungry people out there. Up there on the screen, notice the negative environmental, social, and economic impacts. It's another way of talking about the triple bottom line, which is also referred to sometimes as the 3 Ps, people, planet, profit. In business decisions and in business models and in business systems of all kinds, whether it's food service or manufacturing or healthcare, when thoughtful consideration is given to the 3 Ps, people, planet, profit, or environmental, social, and economic, when all of those are given consideration over time, you have more of a balanced system. That is the goal. This will probably, I'm betting, not the last time you see this inverted triangle today. The inverted triangle is a model that the Environmental Protection Agency has set for a food recovery hierarchy of best practices. The EPA's model is bright purple and yellow. My graphics person didn't like the colors. So anyway, at the very top is your most preferred initiatives, which is source reduction and reuse. And down at the bottom is the least preferred initiatives. So at Creative Dining, when we decided to create our own program, we developed this model and focused primarily all of our efforts on source reduction. So when I talk about source reduction in food service, I'm talking about reducing waste, reducing specifically food waste during production and before it reaches the table, before it's going out to the customer. And source reduction will deliver the most favorable environmental and economic impacts to your operation. So we're going to start on our 10 best practices. Inventory accuracy. This is important no matter what your business is. If you are purchasing and redistributing goods of any kind, this is important to you. If you are purchasing and redistributing perishable goods, this is really of interest to you. And at Creative, we were very, very good about doing monthly physical inventories. When we decided to dig in on our food waste initiatives and our source reduction, what we found out was, who knew? Accuracy counts. We found some bad practices that we've since rectified and made a huge effort to organize storerooms and walk-ins. Freezers are a big problem. Why? Nobody wants to go in there and count. Found lots of our operations relying on maybe PARs that had been set long ago, estimating the contents, and so cleaning up those best practices, really educating our management team and our production teams about the importance of actually doing a physical count. And then the housekeeping, too, obviously on the storerooms and the walk-ins. Three things that we really hit home with our teams about this is not only do you have to do a real physical inventory and count every month, you need to use software. So even the smallest of restaurants, if you're doing more than $500,000 a year in sales, you need to be using inventory software. And luckily, many of our, if you're using a larger distributor, the software is even available to you cost-free, and they have resources and training and maintenance on that. Second thing is a porter position. Manufacturing, they call those inventory supervisors, inventory coordinators. Large restaurants and food service environments really should have a designated position of someone that is receiving your goods, checking them off on the invoices, and keeping your storerooms and coolers organized, and then conferring either with your production manager or the chef, whoever's doing the purchasing. Purchasing's done on a computer now, online, from the cloud. Making sure, again, that accuracy is there. I run into daily of folks, and yes, we know that we have 3 cases of this in the cooler, and I can go in there and find 7 or 15. Having that person can really pay for itself. In this market right now, that is an hourly position for a small to medium-sized food service operation. We're paying anywhere between $15 and $20 an hour, plus a benefit package for that position, which equates to right under $50,000 a year. All that individual has to find you is $157 a day in savings to pay for themselves. So if you're housing a $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 inventory, and for example, the large healthcare dining programs, the large school campus programs are much, much higher than that. This type of individual will pay for themselves and save you money on top of it. The next best practice, buy only what you need. If I at home don't go through my pantries and my refrigerator and my freezer before I go to Meijer or to D&W, I come home with all kinds of stuff I don't need. Extra ketchup. Oh, I didn't realize I had that much tuna fish. Imagine doing that in an environment, if you did that in an environment that's spending millions and millions of dollars on food every year. Grocery list. I need one at home. The same way, I find myself wandering the aisles, buying stuff that I don't need. In these large food service operations, it's absolutely imperative. So when I'm talking to chefs or production managers, how do you do your grocery list? Is it a whiteboard? Is it an online shared G-file drive? Whatever it is, there better be one. And this sounds absolutely logical. In practice, not so much. And it's not just in large institutional feeding. I'm in restaurant kitchens quite a bit, and there's winging it going on. And when you don't have a lot of turnover and you have really, really strong leadership, that winging it will get you so far. But if we're really going to tighten up on food waste, and when we tighten up on food waste, we're tightening up on cash flow too. This is the one area where it almost always equates in dollars saved with food source reduction. Don't guess what you have, especially with produce. Produce is the largest food item, fruits and vegetables that go into landfill. A lot of chefs and culinarians view this as a little bit of a buzzkill. I'm telling them, don't give yourself 15 minutes to order online 15 minutes before the cutoff. You have to take time and plan your order. This is production planning, just like you would have in any other kind of manufacturing. We also have online in our software something called an order guide. And an order guide is basically a list of everything you've ordered. When you get to the point where you have 135 pages of miscellaneous, it's time to sit down and clean up your order guide. These are just all fundamentals of inventory management, which isn't an inherent skill we're finding. This has to be taught. So we now have boot camps at Creative Dining. We're not assuming that people are coming out of culinary school or hospitality management school knowing these things. So we're mentoring them, we're training on them. Had an order guide recently that was 140 pages long, inventory out of control. We incentivized a small team to clean up storerooms, organize walk-ins, and the order guide, which went from 135 pages miscellaneous to about we reduced $27,000 the inventory in 30 days. That's potentially wasted food too. Also, of course, greenhouse gases related to that. The next best practice, label and date everything, because it will make your health department sanitarian love you. This is food code. Every person in food service that is trained in sanitation training understands this, needs to pass a test to understand this. And this is imperative also in controlling food waste. Practice first in, first out, rotation. This is something also that porter position can be responsible for, another level of checking. And hold your staff accountable for this. On January 1st this past year at Creative Dining, we require every person working in the kitchens that tears off one of those labels and dates it, they also have to initial it. There's something about putting your name on something, having ownership of it, that you make sure that it's done correctly. So you can't manage what you don't measure, and planning for large-scale feeding, whether you're feeding 100 covers in a restaurant or you're expecting 7,000 for lunch, planning is absolutely essential. And it needs to be done per meal period. So this is an actual sheet that we use. Obviously, it's done on the computer. And there's different ways of doing this. The important thing is that you're doing something. If you are in a smaller restaurant and you have a pretty static menu and it doesn't change very often, then you're putting your menu items there. If you are in an all-you-care-to-eat environment, like at Grand Valley State University and the residence halls, or here at, over in the cafe here on Grand Rapids Community College's campus, where you're serving multiple things, just all kinds of variation. And I don't know how many of you have eaten in a dining residence hall on a campus. It's not like when I went to school. We have everything for these students now, everything from sushi to vegan pizzas and gluten-free pizzas, and the variety is incredible. That's a lot of production to keep straight. And so it is more important than ever to have production planning. This is like master scheduling in manufacturing. And then there's such a thing called production math. You're estimating your head counts, just like you would be in your sales and manufacturing. You're estimating your head count. And then your menu spread. What do you think people are going to eat? How many of this? How many of that? And you start doing the math. New this year at Creative Dining, we now have a portion at the bottom where we record any excess. And the excess is in pre-production. It's not what came back on people's plates. That's a different story. But we record what did we over-prepare for. And then we keep those records for 1 year. And then we go back and we reference those records. If you're on a menu cycle, like in healthcare or in K through 12 or in institutional feeding, those are very, very valuable. If your menu is pretty static in a restaurant, it's still very valuable. If you're changing up your menu every day, then still recording excess is important. It'll really give you an idea of where to cut back. But for the larger organizations, it's really imperative. You limit self-service where possible. This is pretty self-explanatory, but the reason is that when people self-serve, the portion is usually about 10% higher. Most of the time, they don't eat that 10%. It's going right into the garbage disposal, the waste bin, the compost bin, whatever we have. This is challenging for us right now because server positions are an entry-level position, and there's a very tight labor market out there right now. In the old days, we used to hire student workers to do that. We're finding that student workers really don't want to do that kind of work anymore. So this isn't unique to our company. I was having a tour and a great chat with the folks down at Notre Dame Dining not so long ago, and they were telling me that even several years ago they had 150 student workers. Last year they had 30. So it's a challenge to work through. Practice portion control. This is especially important in plated and served buffets. So like caterers that are putting out these large buffets, all you care to eat environments, which is traditionally a dining hall, and grab and go. This is especially important with animal proteins. Why? Well, they're the most carbon-dense product you have. It takes over 1,800 gallons to produce 1 pound of beef. So that is a carbon and natural resource intensive piece of animal protein there. So you certainly don't waste those, and we really don't waste it either because it's probably the most expensive thing out on the buffet or in a self-serve environment. Brunch is another classic example. And so you just don't need an 8-ounce pork chop on a 3-meat buffet. You want to make those portions smaller because you're going to try a little of this and a little of that. It's a great way to reduce food and your food cost. These two are hand in hand so far with source reduction. Every time that we're saving food, we're saving greenhouse gas emissions, we're saving money. Great incentive. Vessel size. This is what we're doing in all of our all-you-care-to-eat environments right now. We were very successful with this a couple of years at Aquinas College. where we went through and we looked at all these cool new oversized bowls and plates that all the tabletop people are now manufacturing. Man, they look cool. But in an all-you-care-to-eat environment, some of them were like bird baths. You can only imagine, especially you get some athletes up there. They barely carry it back to their table. We purposely undersized all of those plates and bowls. It's an all-you-care-to-eat environment. You can always go back for more. Campus in Indiana, over November, we replaced the oversized vessels. We spent $23,000 on new plates, paid for it itself in less than 90 days in food cost savings. Trayless in all-you-care-to-eat environments. This is a trend that's happened over the last 10 years. Majority of campuses in this country now are trayless. So remember when we're in school, you get the tray and you go around and you get everything. Now we make the students actually only juggle a few things at a time and take them back to their table. They can always go back. This has saved, every time that we have made this transition, it has saved 10 to 20% in overall costs. Food, and also all those trays we're no longer washing with hot water, which is the most expensive kind of water there is, and chemicals, and it's a really wonderful cost savings, but there's just much less food being wasted as well. You don't see, the athletes don't take 6 glasses of chocolate milk and line them up at the tray at once. They have just one big one in their hand, so. So up to this point, this has all been about source reduction. And we are down the triangle now. We're getting closer to the bottom. We've done these in source of, we prioritize them. But now we're getting to the point, we have too much food. We have leftovers. We just have produced too much food. And although we improve and we improve, it is almost inevitable that we're going to have some food waste. It is tough in the hospitality business. You never want to run out of anything. And so you have too much food. So now what? Well, we're getting creative with leftovers. And a trend in the culinary world right now is veg-centric cuisine, plant-based cuisine. And that doesn't necessarily mean vegan or even vegetarian. It just means a lot more plants. And to use meat, as Michael Pollan says, as parsley, which is the way a lot of the world eats. So once again, these are not leftovers that have gone out on a buffet. These are not leftovers that have come back from somebody's plate. This is food that was produced in the kitchen that never left the kitchen. Grains can go into soups and salads. We now have regularly whole grains just cold on all of our salad bars. Meats and vegetables can be put in soups, salad, pizzas, omelets, even desserts. In Kalamazoo last week, we had too many shredded carrots and beets, all locally purchased. We sent them to the bake shop. We had great carrot cake and chocolate beet cake that night. So it adds color, nutrients, and gets this, not only the food and the cost of your resources, your investment back into circulation, but it's getting those nutrients back into circulation too. Important to remember that there are stringent sanitation rules about what can be served, reserved, proper cooling and reheating. This is all in our state and federal food code, and that this has to be properly handled. So once again, this is not food coming back from the consumer. And that was your last chance then to, well, this is really your last chance to feed hungry people with any of that excess food. So food rescue, and again, with pre-consumer food only, if it's been out there on that buffet, and I hear people all the time, oh, look at that. It's going to go to waste. Can't you get that over to the mission? No, I can't. Once it's been out, that's it. But if I have overproduced in the back, and we're cooling it right now, and we're going to make sure that we do that. Donation to local agencies that are feeding food insecure people. We have about 50 million food insecure people in this country. If you are a food service operation that has not yet considered donation, I ask you to think about it. If you are worried about liability, I would like to introduce you to the Good Samaritan Act, the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Food Donation Act, which was established by the Clinton administration in 1996, which provides liability coverage or protection, liability protection from donors when they have acted in good faith, and this is for grocers or for food service. And good faith means good sanitation practices following both federal and state food code. It is easily found on the internet if you just type in Good Samaritan Act, and Feeding America has a beautiful link to it right on their website because it is they are an advocate for it, obviously. So, and then finally, and we actually do quite a bit of this. Feed hungry animals, and we do both pre and post-consumer food with pig farms. We had an incident in Indiana 2 weeks ago where 2 pig farmers got into a fist fight over our compost. It was a little disturbing. We had to get security involved. But this is free food for the farmers, so you can understand why they might be interested in it. But it is amazing what they'll eat. And some farmers with some kinds of pigs are a lot more discerning. And then there are pigs that will eat anything, including our pineapple rinds and pineapple tops. They just eat them right down. So it's we have about 5 or 6 campuses where we move hundreds of pounds to pig farms on a daily basis. Actually, I mean, they come and pick it up. So it's a beautiful thing. And this is at the very tip of our inverted triangle is the food rescue, is pulping and composting. And so in our larger operations, we use these large industrial pulpers, which is, think of like a big garbage disposal. And then it extracts all the water out of it. So the garbage is no longer heavy. The compost is no longer heavy. So it's just like this ground up pulp. And we actually have some of that goes to pig farms too. And then we have, depending on our location, we're either sending that to a commercial composting operation. And we have a couple of campuses where we operate on that have pretty large ag schools, and then and they're doing their own composting. And then we have student groups that are trying everything from earth tubs to all kinds of things. And some of it is, it's a giant biology experiment. But when we're sending it to commercial composters, we have good relationships regionally with those folks. And we're really, I'm getting out there. I've walked the windrows, making sure that that this is truly happening, so that we can talk about it with some depth. However, composting on a large scale still remains extremely challenging for us. We operate in 15 states at multiple locations. We don't have 2 commercial composters that do it the same way, that accept the same things. It is, and to an extent, recycling is the same way. It is very, very, very site-specific. And I could really get excited about some sort of national plan for this, but until then, we're just going to keep doing the best that we can.
We're going to have Janine back up in 40 minutes or so for questions with our other 2 speakers. Now I'd like to welcome Michael McFarlane, who's the Vice President of Food and Beverage for Firekeepers Casino.
Bless you. So, good afternoon. I'm Mike McFarlane. I'm the Vice President of Food and Beverage at Firekeepers Casino. I also run an operation called the Fire Hub, which I will take you all through a little bit today. I'm also the board chair for the Food Bank of South Central Michigan, serving 8 counties. I have to apologize a little bit for this PowerPoint. It's a little discombobulated. I'll try and take you through it the best that I can. I had a summit at the Culinary Institute in Napa 3 weeks ago, which is my alma mater from culinary school. I graduated in '88. And then the Feeding America National Conference after that, and then the NRA show. So it's been kind of a hectic 3 weeks for me. And I appreciate you all coming for this. I want to take you a little bit through what we do at Firekeepers. We have 7 restaurants that currently operate within the casino. Nibi, which is our fine dining restaurant. We serve about 150 covers during the week and up to 225 on the weekends. Dacey's Tap House, which is our newest addition to the stable of restaurants in the casino. We have 46 beers on tap. We also have about 170 seats with our mezzanine. Medium Buffet, which is one of those all-you-can-eat establishments. Notice no trays, which is a very good point that was brought up by our last speaker. We serve around 2,200 covers a night on our Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night offerings. Cafe 24/7 is what it represents. It's a 24-hour, 3-meal period restaurant that we have, kind of featuring American fare. Smoke and Fire started initially as a barbecue restaurant. We've now morphed it into more of a, I guess, a world flavor type of situation. Jamoni's is our grab and go, which really can get a hamburger, pizza, hot dog, anything on the go. And Aurora is our VIP lounge, where our high rollers come in. And I don't think I have banquets on here. Banquets, we do up to 1,000 meals plated, and we do approximately $5 million in revenue out of their annual ad of banquets. What that equates to is about 2.5 million meals that we serve yearly. And the reason that I think the little backstory to this is that it's understanding how much food we bring in. There's myself at the department, then there is 7 executive chefs. There's, well, I forgot my food and beverage director who's in the back. So he does all the day-to-day operations in the restaurants and the bars. And there's 7 executive chefs, there's 7 general managers, and then there's 18 sous chefs, there's 18 supervisors, and then the rest of the culinary brigade is about 560 team members as well. So we have a very, very large establishment under one roof. And that leads to about $42 million a year in food and beverage revenue for just the casino. So as you can see, it's a daunting task to mitigate or control your food waste. We also have a full-service bake shop in there. We do all of our own breads, we do hot dog buns, we do all of our desserts from scratch. We do custom cakes for weddings. So we have a special gentleman that used to be a graphics artist that does all of our cakes for us. And this is all the executive chefs, and the gentleman in the blue shirt is our logistics stewarding manager, which probably has one of the hardest jobs in the casino currently. He organizes offsites for us, which could be the Firekeepers 400, which we sponsor at MIS, and it could be our Symetra Tour LPGA event that we also sponsor. We, as a culinary team, go in and cater those events, in addition to our regular business. What I'm going to do is take you a little bit through what we do on the food recovery hierarchy, which is what was featured earlier, but mine has got the sweet colors on it. So we deal a lot on the second rung, which is feed hungry people. That's obviously extremely important to me, being on the board of directors at the food bank. So we look at this, instead of an ROI, we look at it as an ROC, which is a return on your community, if people have talked about that. We also look at it as a social responsibility for our impact and footprint in the area. We feel, or at least I feel, and have been given ample latitude to take this food that's left and reclaim it, repurpose it. So we've partnered with the food bank. We do an enormous amount of events monthly and yearly with the food bank. We do our fresh food initiatives where we go out into our 8 counties that we serve, and we will actually go with the food distributions in these neighborhoods, whether it's Lenawee County, whether it's Kalamazoo County, Calhoun County, St. Joe's. And one of the things that we were finding as we were doing a lot of the food donations is that people don't understand how to cook the food we give them. They don't understand how to cook kohlrabi. They don't understand how to fabricate a rutabaga. They don't understand how to cook with kale, which is great. There's a lot of people in our business as chefs that don't know how to do that. But it's our responsibility to not only show our customers how to cook and how to fabricate it, but how to make a nutritional meal for their family. It doesn't do any good to get all this food donated. If it sits in the fridge, it rots, it dies, then it really does become food waste because there is zero reclamation on food that's already been donated once. So we will go, we meaning my chefs, myself, Brandon, the other managers, and we will go into the 8 counties with the food bank, and we'll set a booth up, and we will talk to all the customers that come through. We'll have a food tasting, we'll have healthy recipes, and this is a part which I am very, very passionate about as far as the education portion of food reclamation. And it may be food mitigation, it may be whatever 20-cent word you want to come up with. But if we educate our customers and people in our areas, impoverished areas especially, how to cook nutritionally with food, the importance of nutrition, and how to make a good meal for your family, we are mitigating food waste. Again, we have our 8 counties that we serve. We have impacted in a year 106,566 people just out of this FFI, which is a Fresh Food Initiative program with the food bank. We also speak to these groups about food safety training. Again, it goes back to how you set your refrigerator up, how you're able to not store things on top of the fridge because there's an exhaust there and that's where all the heat dissipates from the compressor. We actually get with our customers and set it up like you would in marketing. You know, you put all your proteins at eye level, what to put in the drawer, what to put down in the crisper, why you put it here, and the benefits of that. And we do cooking classes. We pair up with MSUE and we do diabetic cooking classes. We do special education cooking classes. And again, what this does is it helps to educate the populace on how to utilize fresh produce, how to utilize their double up bucks, how to utilize SNAP. And what that does is it leads to less food waste. We currently are piloting a program in Battle Creek right now at 3 of the schools that have the highest free and reduced lunch rates. I believe it's Post Franklin, Verona, and then we actually do Level Sports. It's like an after-school pack program. So we've donated right now over 2,700 pounds of produce, and we've donated sourced cases of snacks which are healthy, hummus, some things that are going to help build some nutritionally sound things. This doesn't necessarily lend to this presentation, but it does kind of lend to the overall scope of what we talked about earlier with the James Beard Foundation and what we as chefs and people in the food and beverage industry have, that I like to say, is a social responsibility. How we can give back to the community, because the more your company makes an impact or a footprint or profit, for lack of a better word, in turn there should be some reinvestment in your community. At least that's the approach that I'm taking with it. What we're also very proud of is our food rescue program. Again, we spoke earlier about food that's left over, food that's left from a banquet. We have a snow day, the casino's up and running. We're prepped for a 2,000-person buffet. We get one of those lovely Michigan nor'easters, and the casino's dead. Okay, so we have enough food that's pre-consumer, that's prepped and ready to go. What are you gonna do with it? And I think there were some excellent examples previous of how to redistribute or reclaim that food. We take a different approach. So we take the food that's obviously been stored in a very safe environment and prepped in a safe environment. We blast chill it. So we take it from its held temperature down under 41 degrees. Instead of the 6-hour time frame that you're given by law, we do it in about 90 minutes with our blast chillers. There's this lovely gentleman temping everything, make sure it's good. And then we repack everything. So we take it into our garmager or a clean room, and we pack everything in 2- and 4-pound containers. And what this does is it gives us some manageable portions to then take and distribute to the food bank. So we take these in these large trays, bread trays. And so far this year, we've reclaimed just over 1,300 pounds of food, and this goes directly to the food banks. It's high quality food, it's prepared in a very safe manner. And again, you've got a Good Samaritan Act and you've got a lot of areas that you're protected from litigation. But it's also, I guess, incumbent on us to make sure that when we donate food, it should be healthy. And we touched on it earlier with the cakes and, you know, with the sweets and the snacks. And what we really try and do at the food bank is we try to trade with other agencies to get healthy food. We'll trade cakes and soda and things that get donated to us for produce. And I'm not saying that we're any better than any other, but I think at least from a mission standpoint, it's easier for us to get rid of a pallet of Diet Pepsi and get in, you know, 4,000 pounds of produce. I mean, to us, that's a huge win. We're on track to donate 1 ton this year. What we're really excited about is that since we are partnered up in MIS this year, I was speaking to the chef this morning. They're going to feed about 20,000 people daily in their VIP area. About 25 to 45,000 pounds a day in food will go through those areas. We're going to go in at the end of the race weekend, and we're going to take all the leftover pre-consumer food, blast chill it, pack it with our whole crew, and then we're going to distribute that to the food bank because Jackson is in one of our counties. And honestly, if it wasn't, we'd do it anyway. We're involved with the APA in their Food Recovery Challenge, and what this does is it helps our chefs and it helps everyone that works in the culinary department understand the importance of either post and pre-consumer waste, where, you know, the composting, and we also have a pulper. It gets everyone involved in, whether we talked earlier, conscientious purchasing, more care and prep, outreach and education, and it gives you just a little bit of indication or validation, I guess, when it comes to the end of the year. And I spoke last year in Iowa at a food recovery summit out there and talked to the EPA people, and it's amazing how many casinos or large feeding places are not involved in this. So this is a project that, it's funny when I get up and speak because I'm surprised that I did not get fired for this project. Because daily I would drive to work and pass this fire station that I thought was an amazing building. It was built in 1904. It's in a very, very impoverished area in Battle Creek, and I just thought it'd be a cool restaurant. A lot of people have repurposed fire stations. So, being on the board, I thought, wouldn't it be cool if you could open a restaurant where the profits went to nonprofits? It's a historic building, so this building was set to be condemned, and this is it back in, I don't know, probably 1915 or 16. It was a horse fire station. Where the location is in your 2 most impoverished areas in Battle Creek, which is the Post Addition and Washington Heights, for accessibility. And then what if you could put a food pantry in the back of that restaurant? So you could run it with a little bit of more, I don't know, boutique, a little more dignity as far as how you can treat your guests. And what a cool concept that would be. And Kendall Street Pantry was exactly what we wanted to have with the Fire Hub. So I went to our owners with the council of 5 people, and I went in and I said, we'd like to buy this firehouse. We'd like to spend a lot of money on it. We can't give you any money back on it, and all the profits that we make are gonna go to charity. So I thought it was gonna be a really short meeting, but it wasn't. And it was interesting to see how our owners got behind the idea that that commitment to return on community and social responsibility was true to their values as well. And we're owned by a Native American group. And food is very, very, very dear to the culture that the Nottawasepi Huron Band of the Potawatomi has in their history. So again, we partnered up with the Food Bank of South Central Michigan and Firekeepers. We use a great software system called Pantry Track, which gives us an idea of who our customers are. It tracks interesting statistics. And I don't know if they're on this PowerPoint. We fed about 6,000 families last year out of this pantry, and we're only open 1 day a week for 2 hours. And we do it at night. And the interesting thing is 33% of the people that came to the pantry came 1 time, which is exactly what this pantry was designed for. It was designed for people that just needed that help to get over a little hump. Maybe they had a rough patch, something like that. And then the other 33% were 5 visits or less. Again, open 1 day a week. It's a very dignified experience when you come in. You get a little shopping basket. You get to pick what you take home. There's a limit based on what your household size is. Pantry Track tracks that. It also helps us get out information to our customers about cooking classes and other events that we're doing in the community. We have got calls for emergency distributions. The manager will either go over there and help families out, or we'll go and help families out over there. So last year, like I said, 1,400 households were served. I think that equated to 6,000 and change as far as people goes. And 64,000 pounds were distributed. A lot of that distribution was canned goods from the food bank, but a lot of it was the reclaimed food that we had at Firekeepers. Also food rescue that we had from our bake shop, and food rescue from Fire Hub, which is a retail bakery and a retail restaurant and pizzeria. We are in the process right now of creating a teaching garden with the Battle Creek Community Schools, really trying to focus on the importance of balanced nutrition, where food comes from. SOMAT is our pulper system that we use in the casino, and it takes about 85% of the solid waste out of the stream. And again, that goes off to our pig farmers, that goes off to our composting areas. And I think those are excellent programs, and I think it's important not only from a I guess, EPA standpoint, but it also saves you some money as an organization. The last thing that I just wanted to touch base on quickly is we are breaking ground this week on this lovely greenhouse project that is going to be out on reservation land. So the idea behind this greenhouse ties in with our commitment to education in the community. So we have taken over the tribal community garden, which you can see in the middle of the lower right-hand slide there. And then we're also putting in a 9,000 square foot year-round greenhouse that's going to be hydroponic and aquaponic. The idea behind this is we're going to grow produce for the schools to put free salad bars in the schools in order for the schools to let us come in and reclaim food. And I know it sounds backwards, but it attacks a couple of issues that we've had in our area. It's the lunch program and the lack, I think, of emphasis on nutrition with some of the contract feeders that we come across. And the other thing is we're able to provide not only for the students, but also for the teachers who now historically have gone through a very difficult time with not getting raises, and they're very underappreciated currently. I think it gives us an opportunity to provide a very organic and nutritional alternative to someone that doesn't want to come in and eat a hot lunch. And hopefully that will help take away some of the stigma of kids that go in there and they get this big giant stamp on their hand and it turns into just a big social shaming thing when you can't even have a child that forgot his money or her money at home to come in and get a hot lunch without having to go through, I think, not a very flattering process sometimes. So our goal is to start with the Athens School District, which is right around the reservation where a lot of our tribal members go to school. And then we'll be expanding into Battle Creek. We've already met with the superintendent of schools, and she's on board 100%. And so this will give us an opportunity to pair up with Chartwell's and go in there and reclaim some of their food. Currently, they have not been very cooperative with us to let us come in there, and it's at no cost to them and no possible litigation to them. So for us, it's kind of a win-win. And again, this was another thing. We had a big membership meeting, and I'll kind of end on this. So I'm going up in front to talk about a greenhouse that costs all in maybe, I don't know, 500 grand. The other group is going to propose a hotel, which is about, I don't know, $70 million. I get grilled for probably 45 minutes about the greenhouse. By the time the hotel goes up, no questions by the membership. So sometimes, and I think the other speakers have touched on it, sometimes you have to leverage your, and I won't even say fame or status, sometimes you have to shame people into things. And I don't mean shame in a negative way. I mean more don't be afraid to put yourself out a little bit. You know, the worst thing somebody can say is no. And fortunately, about 4 years ago, when the tribe decided it'd be a good idea for all of us to get on boards and become active in the community, some of us really took an opportunity to run with it. And my philosophy now is that we're just going to keep pushing and pushing to try and reduce the hunger in our immediate area. And hopefully some of these will be best practices. I know I'm working with the Des Moines Food Bank that I spoke to down in the Feeding America conference in Tampa to work with their casino they have there. And again, we don't know anything compared to a lot of people that are you know, in the scientific portion of this, but what we do know is that we don't like to throw food in the trash. And we do know there's people out there that are really hungry. And this is kind of what we have done to make an impact in our area. So I'll be around for questions if you have any. And again, I thank you for your time, and that's all I got.
Thank you, Michael. Next, I'd like to welcome up Kate Binder, the Sustainability Specialist for Bell's Brewing.
Is there a way to show the notes on here, please?
Either way. Oh, you need the notes? Yeah.
Thank you. Hello. So I get to tell you about our compost story at Bell's. Just for reference, if you haven't been down to our cafe, we have two main locations in Kalamazoo. We have our Vegcentric cafe, which is our restaurant, and our smaller brewery. It was our original brewery. So our main production facility is out in Compost, about 7.5 miles away from downtown. Story starts 2015. We expanded our restaurant, saw a lot more trash going to landfill. We were, toying with the idea of trying to find a composter to take our waste, because it was a restaurant, so a lot of our waste was compostable organic material. But looking for service in the Kalamazoo area, we're kind of in a dead zone for compost hauling service. The Grand Rapids ones don't necessarily come down that far, and some of the other composters it costs a lot more money because they have to haul it so far. So we were looking at an increase in our hauling costs of about 5 times per yard more expensive for compost versus landfill. So that was kind of the situation. In comes the Bell's SWAT team. So we have a sustainability committee that kind of turns over every year, and we recruit these members from all over the company. So we try and get sales staff, kitchen staff, marketing. We really prioritize getting a very broad, diverse range of people on this team. And part of their initiation, their orientation, is to look at some data from other breweries that are about our size, compare all of our KPIs, and see kind of where we're falling short or where there's room to grow and what we can do. So we presented all of the data to them. This included water and electricity and natural gas, and they really wanted to focus on the solid waste issue because they noted that we were sending more landfill waste from our Vegcentric cafe than from our main production facility in Comstock, which does between 1.5 and 2 million pounds of solid waste a year, most of which is recycling. So they saw that our smaller location was making more landfill waste and wanted to figure out a solution to it. So they got to do a waste audit. We did 2 waste audits. Originally, we had 2 landfill dumpsters. They got to pull every single piece of trash out of the landfill dumpster and sort it. The goal was to find out what types of organic material we saw most and quantify that so we could see exactly what size of compost situation we would need and what type. If we had more pre-consumer waste, more post-consumer waste, what would be the appropriate compost method for it. So unsurprisingly, we saw lots of food waste. We do make food donations when possible. We have a lot of resources really close to us in downtown Kalamazoo. But we saw tons of items that were post-consumer. Another cool thing that we did before we started our waste audit was try and categorize our waste with different bags beforehand. So we were a little nervous that just doing a waste audit 1 or 2 days, we would get just a very small sample of what we were seeing. So for a couple months, we quantified what we were seeing in the dumpsters just visually by using a colored bag scenario. So the purple bags were pre-consumer waste from our kitchens, so that would be potential food we could send for pig feed. We had black bags for our post-consumer waste, so that's plate scrapings, anything that was prepared back of house that didn't get to go out front and spoiled or needed to go to landfill. And then the green bags were front of house, so those are bathrooms and our customer-facing bins. So we did that for a couple months too, just to try and get a visual quantity of what was going into those bins, in addition to the data we collected through the SWAT team. So I'm gonna show you the data. First, so we're all on the same page, I am gonna present it in yards. So a cubic yard is a 3 by 3 by 3 square. Here's what we saw. This is from 2 landfill dumpsters. We had about 4.9 yards of overall waste. So almost half of that was organic material. We had about a yard of recycling material in our landfill bin, and then we had really only 1.6 yards of pure landfill waste. That's like soft plastics that can't be recycled, some foam trays, just general things that we didn't have any other option for than landfill. So after seeing this data, we had divided out this organic material category into additional 2 categories. So the light green there, we had almost a yard, about 0.8 of just paper towel. So that's coming from back of house hand wash stations and also our front of house bathrooms for customers. And then the rest, about 1.4 yards, was actual food waste. So looking at these numbers, we already were talking about doing hand dryers in some of our customer-facing bathrooms, and we were able to use this data to really push that forward. So we ran the ROI on installing hand dryers versus the cost of paper towel, and we installed new hand dryers in all of our customer-facing bathrooms. And the cost aversion, we paid that back in about a year with the reduction in paper towel use. So following that, we did 1 more waste audit. We saw a lot less waste overall. So part of that is because we were seeing less paper towel in the bathrooms. Also, we made a switch to allowing glass in our garden. So instead of seeing a lot of plastic cups, some of that recycling that was in the landfill bin before was some of our plastic cups, which have a separate collection method for them. So we were seeing less plastic cups in general, which meant less in the bin. So between these 2 numbers, we felt like we had a pretty good idea of how much waste in general we had, which was we had almost 5 yards the first time, 3 yards the second time. We had 10 yards of dumpster space in the back, and we thought we had been filling it, but according to our data, we weren't. So that meant that we had extra space and we could get rid of a dumpster. So this is where we started our plan for how we were gonna reduce dumpster space and use that money, that savings, to pay for compost service. So of course, we had to pitch this to the crew downtown, to our managers and to our employees. And when you say the words, "we're gonna take a dumpster away," the first thing they think of is a pile of trash. And a trash mountain from a restaurant is a really stinky trash mountain. So here's how we pitched that plan. So originally we had a 6-yard dumpster and a 4-yard dumpster. We proposed that we could lock the 4-yard dumpster, keep it on site just as a backup, and use solely that 6-yard dumpster, knowing that about 4 yards of what was in it would be landfill, and the remaining 2 yards would be our compost that we would eventually take out. So after that, if we were successful for a couple months, then we would switch to compost, get rid of that 1 dumpster, go to carts. So we had priced out service from My Green, Michigan, which hauls to Hammond Farms near Lansing, and that was our proposed plan. So they were very interested in doing that, and the project was approved. So we went back and we locked the dumpster and started more work. So just because we had a yes didn't mean we were done prepping for this transition. So one of the first things we did was take some tours around town. So we were able to tour Hopcat. They use My Green Michigan also. So it was a great way for some of our kitchen staff to really see this in practice. It wasn't just me preaching about compost and promising them that it would work. They got to see a facility that actually was using it. We toured Bronson Hospital too, who also uses My Green Michigan, and that was very helpful. We also did a lot of communication. So we have all staff meetings downtown. We have close to 170 employees, and a lot of them are wait staff. They work different shifts. They work part-time. So it's really hard to get a mass communication out to them. Some of them don't even know how to sign into their emails. So it was really great for the all-staff meetings to just let everyone know that there is a point person for the compost. If they have questions, they can come and ask questions during that forum too. We also went to leadership meetings to get feedback from the managers and leaders downtown. One of my favorite things we did was start a communication board. So it was just a bulletin board, but they were allowed to just pin items of waste onto the board, and I would check it a couple times a week and write answers. So that was a great way for them to not even have to see me and ask great questions. I had things that I didn't even know we had downtown pinned to the board. I also held some office hours, and then we did some signage development. So we started our compost rollout back of house so that we could get our own staff really well trained and affluent in what types of materials could go to My Green Michigan. They have a criteria that any of the PLA plastics be BPI certified compostable because they make a really great compost product, and they want to be confident about that waste that we're sending them. So we could communicate about that to our back of house staff first. They could get used to that criteria. We vetted these signs with them and got feedback from them on the signs. Then we started our communications for our front of house for all of our fans. So we did a blog post, we did some social media posts, like, hey, this front of house compost service is starting. We, in the summer, have patio barbecues, and that's really where we see a lot of these compostable one-time use items being used. So we really wanted to make sure they knew it was coming. And we developed some signs. The patio is a really great space for controlling what people have. So we were purchasing all of these materials up front. We switched to all compostable. We use Vegcentric brand items. We were able to, through our graphic design department, put images of exactly what those items were on the signs. And we rolled it out during our first patio barbecue. I fully expected it to be a mess and sort a bunch of bins. But to my surprise, I came through and the patio was totally full. There wasn't a seat to be had. I think I pulled 2 cups out of the compost and went on with my day. It was really great. So the simplicity of the signs in our system, I think, really had a lot to do with that. And I can depend on our back of house staff to sort things when they're a little bit wrong too, which is pretty great. So ongoing changes. Any solid waste program is constantly changing. It's never final. So we had an email circulate not too long into the program with, I don't know if you guys saw the video of a sea turtle getting a straw pulled out of its nose. It's a plastic straw. It's pretty horrible to watch. So that was super impactful for our staff downtown. And I, after having a conversation about some of the leaders to see if we could do this, I chatted with some of our front of house managers and said, can we do straws upon request only? Like, do we have to give a straw every time we set out a water glass? And they were like, no, we'll put them away right now. And that night, they just changed it for everyone. They keep straws with them, so if someone asks for one, they always have one, but no longer do you just get a water glass with a straw in it when you go downtown to the cafe. And now that we're through our backstock of plastic straws, we've switched to compostable straws also. This compost as a topic in shift notes kind of happened organically. This is something that Hopcat was doing and that some of our managers got to see during our tour. And they started doing it just by themselves without me prompting. They check in and make sure that everyone has been looking at bins while they're out on their shift and take notes on how it's going and make sure that I get that feedback. We also have switched around our kitchen collection a bit. We used to have really tall wall hugger bins, but they were getting too heavy, so they switched over to a more bucket method. So they collect compost in buckets that they can kind of move around while they're prepping. So one person prepping will kind of have their own bucket to use. And we're finishing phasing out plastics. So as we run out of our stock, we've officially moved over to all compostable materials for our disposables. So that's all I have, and I think we'll move to questions next. So thank you very much.
Janine, would you like to? Yep, you. Share this one. Janine's got one as well. Do we have any questions for any of our three presenters?
He's got one back there.
Hi, this is just a kind of a small, silly question, but when you talked about glass on your patio, having worked in lots of restaurants and with lots of events, people look at you like you're absolutely insane. How did you get that okay?
So our safety team was super instrumental in making that happen. So there are a lot of places in Kalamazoo that have really nice gardens and patios, and they were allowing glass. So I think that kind of spurred the conversation. Our safety team did a best practice review to see how others were doing it, and they came up with some really robust protocol. If there is broken glass, they know how to respond to it immediately and clean it up so that no one gets cut. And they were fully prepared to try it and see if it worked and then roll it back if they had to. But it's been really successful. And yeah, glass breaks every once in a while, but it's not nearly as much as they thought it was going to be. And they've been very good about using their protocol too. We had a question up here too, Dan. Next.
I need the steps.
How do the employees feel about the buy-in once the program has been adopted?
So the mean age of our crew downtown is pretty young, like mid to low 20s, and I think they're all used to talking about compost and the fact that there are plastics made from compostable materials. So they were really excited about it, and they've been super supportive, asking very challenging questions, and it's been great. I mean, the employees really like it. So, and I don't know if that's just self-selection. We hire for cultural fit, and so they're just great people to begin with, or, yeah.
I guess that would also then
Sure.
the group as well, because everybody else has a sustainability program.
Yeah, definitely.
Just to get a feedback as to how the employees and then your stakeholders, your managers feel about it.
So when we implemented composting, commercial composting, we had specific clients and specific locations where we operate that were moving to net zero to landfill. So even if I wanted it to be a choice, in some of our locations it was not. And in those locations, we put landfill deferment as part of our reporting KPIs. Every single one of our employees, whether they're hourly or salaried, are on a bonus program based on those KPIs. So when they realize that their bonus depended on the outcomes of the landfill deferment KPIs, everybody got on board very quickly. But the most rewarding part, and I think this is true with most of the sustainability initiatives that we do at work, what's really rewarding for me is have employees come up to me and say, I started composting at home. Or we never used to recycle at all at home, or I've switched over to green chemicals, or it's just, you know, the advocacy, and I get pretty worked up in front of employees about this stuff, and that's when you know you really have got embedment. But yeah, when you work in it, we told folks that sorting waste stream, whether it's recycling or composting, is no different than our sanitation practices or anything else. They're going to be held accountable for them.
And, you know, for us, we do a lot with composting and, you know, with the pig farmers and things like that. But from the tier that we really concentrate on the food pyramid, when I go in and speak to new hire orientation, we have people that come into the casino as first-time employees. And I've actually had a lot of people in the past 7 or 8 groups that we do that raise their hands and say, you know, I was a customer at the pantry, at Kendall Street Pantry, and it really helped my family get over a really tough time, and it gave me the ability to come in and apply for a job here because now I got my car back on the road and I was able to save a little bit of money. Conversely, the cooks and everyone that work in the kitchen, nobody likes to throw food away. So when you start to get a project that's got some momentum behind it and you get a little bit of buy-in from the community and you start to see some positive feedback come from the people that you're helping with it, then I think it becomes kind of addictive and it becomes part of your culture. And I think that all three of us up here have one way or another incorporated our initiatives into the culture. And then once it's there, you can really begin to, and I think you've built off yours and you've built off yours, and I think we'll continue to build off ours as well. It really goes to how you roll it out. And you know, if you as a leader are there to reinforce it and embrace it. If you just put a memo out and tell people to start doing this and this and this, they're not going to do it. You really have to make it approachable and you have to make it feasible. So.
And leadership has to live it.
Absolutely.
At work, absolutely. At least at work, if not all the time. But you can't walk in with a 64-ounce big gulp and throw it in the garbage.
Waste all that delicious, nutritious soda.
Right, right.
Hi, thank you all again. This question is actually specifically for Michael in regards to the Fire Hub, and I don't know how much you can indulge on it, but besides the initial investment from Firekeepers, have you tracked how quickly something like that could be self-sustainable, or do you always have to have an infusion of money to make it sustainable?
Yes, I can answer that.
Okay.
First off, let's just say that the initial investment was 3 times what we had thought, which was why I really thought I was going to get fired. And let's be honest, chefs are not good business people. The most, and you probably know it more than anybody, you know, talking about the orders and everything.
I'm not saying anything.
Well, it's okay. It's all right. I at least acknowledge that. So we went in with a very sizable purchase and plan to build this thing out. And with any historical building, there was lead, there was asbestos, there was brownfield. So we had to do that. And then there was a point where it was kind of go, no go. And I thought it could, and really the owners again stepped up. From the day we opened, we have not had 1 penny infused from the casino. That's not to say that we're turning an inordinate amount of profit right now, but what we're able to do now is we are just getting ready to present a check to the Food Bank of South Central Michigan for, I believe it's just over $15,000 for our first year, which is pretty good. And we've also done some capital reinvestments in the property. We put some shades up. We're working on extra parking because it's gotten very busy. We've taken some jobs and expanded their roles and compensated our people. We've rolled a benefit package back into our staff that makes it a little more palatable with a 401k and medical, dental, and vision for our staff rather than pulling that right out for profit and donation. We wanted to make sure that our people were taken care of. I don't see us ever having to do that. There are capital projects that we go back to the casino for. Like we're doing a patio expansion this summer that we put on a capital expenditure specifically to come out of a different, but operationally day to day, we have paid our bills, we've paid our staff, we've paid our taxes, we've paid everything that we had to without 1 dime from the casino. And that's not shilling extra labor over there. It's not having a bunch of guys work on the arm from salary or anything like that. And I think a lot of that has to do with what the mission is. And the people are very, very engaged. Trying to hire in the beginning, you had to find a particular individual that wanted to work in that establishment. So I hope that answers your question.
Three quick things. What's the pushback when you start downsizing serving containers and taking away trays, things like that? Secondly, straws. Great that you're looking for ways to limit their use. We're hearing a lot more about going to paper straws. Do you really see this as a sea change? Do you think we'll go back to paper straws? And one last thing. So much ice. I always wonder when somebody gives me a glass of ice water in January, I'm living in Michigan, why they feel that's necessary and if that's something that might be on the table at some point to discuss.
I haven't vetted the paper straws, so I don't really know much about them. Our vendor that we use for straws, I don't think has a paper straw offering, so I don't know much about them. I do know there were a couple of the PLA like compostable plastic straws that we looked at, and one you just like if you like squeeze it too hard, it's done for and it leaks all over. So the ones we picked were a little bit more robust, but still had that BPI certification with them. So yeah, I can't totally answer your question about paper, but it sounds nice. Yeah. What was your second question?
Trays or vessels? I think that was for me.
Regarding
So downsizing with vessels and trays on our college campuses, not surprising. The people that are most adverse to that are athletes, just because they both protein and carb and everything load. And I've actually taken calls from angry parents paying that meal plan bill, and it's like, they have to walk 40 feet to go get seconds, and that's been tough. However, the freshmen don't know any difference. They're so glad to be away from home, and there's all this free food, so I don't have to educate them at all. Seniors are, by the time you're a senior, you're not always eating in the dining hall. It's the sophomores and juniors, and over the years, as they have gone to visit friends' schools and things like that, they're seeing that it's trayless. And the biggest part of that is that anytime we've gone in and eliminated that or really downsized vessels, we've done a marketing campaign for 2 to 3 weeks and a social media campaign ahead of time so people understand why it's happening, the sustainability story around it, the social justice story around not wasting food, not wasting natural resources. And today's millennials, that speaks pretty strongly to them. So when I started that process back in 2008, it was kind of a big, hairy deal. Not so much anymore. On the straws, I'm a big advocate for the Don't Suck campaign that's out there. It's actually a thing. Hashtag Don't Suck, and it's to eliminate straws. And I've been fortunate in my life to have traveled quite a bit. The use of straws for everything is a uniquely American thing.
So is ice.
Yeah, so is ice, yeah. And it's just, we're serving everything with a straw. And so I am really kind of taking it a location by a location and really looking at it. Can we just get away with not even having them? And what we're finding that, especially in our corporate environments, our corporate cafes and things like that, people are fine not having straws. There are certain locations that their housekeeping protocols require lids and straws, especially in manufacturing environments. So if you're going into the company cafeteria and you're taking it back to your station, and that I understand. Those locations where we have to use straws and we're composting, we use PLA straws. It is not one recipe for every single location. When you're multi-location, you have to really work with what fits. And in more and more, and especially in our fine dining locations, we are doing water on demand. 90% don't ask for it. Have several corporate locations where there's a large international clientele coming through. We're offering anything that they want to possibly drink, including ice water, but we're not pre-setting with ice water. Saves water, energy, labor. That's a beautiful story right there.
Don't take beer out of the
No.
There's another certification, the Shed the Straw. They'll give you some advertising materials you can put up in your facility too. That's through Shed Aquarium in Chicago, and they'll add you to a whole list they have online of places that don't give straws on demand, which is nice.
We're going to have to move into break. If you have any burning questions, we didn't get a chance, so we're going to have more of an open discussion period at the end in which our three speakers may be available to answer some of those questions again as well. But if we can give them a quick round of applause.